General Riley.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the Court.
Could you help me with this? Assume for the moment, you may disagree, assume for the moment that this is unprecedented. This is a step beyond what our cases have allowed, the affirmative duty to act to go into commerce. If that is so, do you not have a heavy burden of justification? I understand that we must presume laws are constitutional. But even so, when you are changing the relation of the individual to the government in this, what we can stipulate is, I think, a unique way, do you not have a heavy burden of justification to show authorization under the Constitution?
So, two things about that, Justice Kennedy. First, we think this is regulation of people's participation in the health care market. And all this minimum coverage provision does is say that instead of requiring insurance at the point of sale, that Congress has the authority under the commerce power and the necessary proper power to ensure that people have insurance in advance of the point of sale because of the unique nature of this market, because this is a market in which although most of the population is in the market most of the time, 83% visit a physician every year, 96% over a 5-year period. So virtually everybody in society is in this market, and you've got to pay for the health care you get. The predominant way in which it's paid for is insurance, and the respondents agree that Congress could require that you have insurance in order to get health care or forbid health care from being provided.
Why do you define the market that broadly? Health care. It may well be that everybody needs health care sooner or later, but not everybody needs a heart transplant. Not everybody needs a liver transplant.
That's correct, but you never know whether you're going to
Could
be
you
that
define
person.
the market? Everybody has to buy food sooner or later, so you define the market as food. Therefore, everybody's in the market. Therefore, you can make people buy broccoli.
No, it's quite different. It's quite different. The food market, while it shares that trait that everybody's in it, it is not a market in which your participation is often unpredictable and often involuntary. It is not a market in which you often don't know before you go in what you need, and it is not a market in which if you go in and seek to obtain a product or service, you will get it even if you
And the question is whether or not there are any limits on the Commerce Clause. Can you identify for us some limits on the Commerce Clause?
Yes. The rationale purely under the Commerce Clause that we're advocating here would not justify forced purchases of commodities for the purpose of stimulating demand. It would not justify purchases of insurance for the purposes in situations in which insurance doesn't serve as the method of payment.
But why
for
not?
Service
If Congress says that interstate commerce is affected, isn't, according to your view, that the end of the analysis?
No. We think that the difference between those situations and this situation is that in those situations, Your Honor, Congress would be moving to create commerce. Here, Congress is regulating existing commerce, economic activity that is already going on, people's participation in the healthcare market, and is regulating to deal with existing effects of existing commerce. Healthcare market, you're going into the market without the ability to pay for what you getting the healthcare service anyway as a result of the social norms that allow that to which we've obligated ourselves. So people
don't obligate yourself to that. Why?
I can't imagine that the Commerce Clause would forbid Congress from taking into account this deeply embedded social norm.
You can do it.
But the reason this is concerning is because it requires the individual to do an affirmative act. In the law of torts, our tradition, our law has been that you don't have the duty to rescue someone if that person's in danger. The blind man's walking in front of a car and you do not have a duty to stop him, absent some relation between you. And there's some severe moral criticisms of that rule, but that's generally the rule. And here the government is saying that the federal government has a duty to tell the individual citizen that it must act. And that is different from what we have in previous cases.
Well,
that changes the relationship of the federal government to the individual in a very fundamental way.
Before you move on, could you express your limiting principle as succinctly as you possibly can? Congress can force people to purchase a product where the failure to purchase the product has a substantial effect on interstate commerce if what? If this is part of a larger regulatory scheme? Is that it? Is there anything more?
We got two, and they're different. Let me state them. First, with respect to the comprehensive scheme. When Congress is regulating is enacting a comprehensive scheme that it has the authority to enact, that the necessary and proper clause gives it the authority to include regulation, including a regulation of this kind, if it is necessary to counteract risks attributable to the scheme itself, that people engage in economic activity that would undercut the scheme. It's very much like Wickard in that respect, very much like Raich in that respect. With respect to considering the Commerce Clause alone and not embedded in the comprehensive scheme, our position is that Congress can regulate the method of payment by imposing an insurance requirement in advance of the time in which the service is consumed, when the class to which that requirement applies either is or virtually certain to be in that market, when the timing of one's entry into that market and what you will need when you enter that market is uncertain, and when you will get the care in that market, whether you can afford to pay for it or not, and shift costs to other market participants. So those are our views. Those are the principles we're advocating for, and it's, in fact, the conjunction of the two of them here that makes this, we think, a strong case under the Commerce Clause.